Winter is about to begin here in the UK, and some of my plants are going to suffer from the lower light and the cooler temperatures. But there are some plants in my collection that I can depend on to get through these cooler months without any drama. So today I thought I would share with you my kind of most hardy plants that just thrive on neglect. First up we have the ZZ plant, and I just can't rave about this plant enough. It really is so cool. It's really adaptable light-wise, and you know, you get some plants that tend to get yellowing leaves in the winter. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I certainly do experience that with my plants. But ZZ plants in my experience are really awesome for being hardy, adaptable, and yeah, they don't really require all that much watering either, especially in autumn, winter. You'll definitely want to cut back on the watering. But yeah, this is the green version, and I've had the raven version for quite some time now, but I recently added the green version to my collection. But yeah, ZZ plants are just really awesome for being really pretty and structural, yet being completely fuss-free, and yeah, you definitely won't get any drama from this one. So if, like me, you're in the UK or somewhere else in the world that gets really kind of dark winters, this is definitely one that's going to survive. Next up we have the dragon tree, and even though this one does really enjoy a lot of sun, it also is really great at getting through the winters in my experience, and yeah, it doesn't tend to suffer much. It does require less watering, as most plants do in winter, but I've never ever had a problem with this one. It's one of those really hardy plants, and yeah, it's kind of one of those plants in my collection that's kind of like a staple plant in the background. I often forget about it and think, oh my gosh, I better check if it needs watering, and yeah, it's absolutely fine. You just want to let this one dry out all the way down, and it really is adaptable to the winter sun that we do not get here in the UK. But with this one, I tend to find that it even does grow during the colder months too. And yeah, it's just such an easy plant. I never worry about it. It's very pest resistant too. And yeah, it's just one of those kind of underrated plants, I'd say, that definitely thrives on neglect. Next we have the Ficus robusta. This is a rubber plant, and it really is a robust plant. This one recently had spider mites, and you wouldn't even know it. It's come through it just fine. I've had this one in all sorts of lighting situations, especially when it has spider mites and I have to put it in quarantine. I might have to put it in a spot where it doesn't necessarily get the best light, but it does just fine, and it really is a survivor, this one. These plants are super easy to care for. They do like to dry out all the way before you water them, and in my experience, if you forget to water them for a little while, they're absolutely fine. And yeah, I'd say this is definitely one of the easiest rubber plants. I've had this one for a number of years now, and I did chop and prop it this season just gone, so it could branch out. And yeah, I've got some other plants in the pot too, so I'm trying to kind of fill it out over time. But yeah, it also propagates really well too. It maybe isn't the fastest to root when you propagate it, but it definitely is a plant that just can really survive any condition, so I could highly recommend this one. Next up is the corn plant, and this one is one of my most hardy house plants. It even puts out new growth in low light areas, so if you have an area that is not very well lit, this one, in my experience, is a true survivor. It doesn't seem to suffer from yellowing, which many plants often do when you give them a lower light situation. I just find this one to be amazing, and it's actually used in offices quite a bit because it can survive under fluorescent lights too. It seems to be, in my experience, one of the hardiest houseplants, possibly one of the most underrated houseplants. If you're looking for a plant that you can just put in any spot in your home and basically neglect it, this is the plant for you. It definitely likes to dry out all the way between watering, and yeah, it doesn't mind being quite dry. I make sure that I use soil for this one that's very well draining with lots of perlite and orchid bark in it. But yeah, one of the unsung heroes of the plant world here, one of those kind of staple background plants. Next up we have my favourite Aglaonema, the Aglaonema Silver Queen, and this one really is a queen. It is a super hardy plant. It's got really beautiful variegation, as you can see, and not only is this one surviving this winter, it's also thriving and putting out so many new leaves at the moment, which is really great because many of my plants have stopped growing, but some of them are still growing. This one is one of them, and yeah, this one is just so easy to care for, and it's also really beautiful. So I could highly recommend this one. It's very adaptable, and most Aglaonemas are pretty adaptable, but yeah, this one probably is my favourite at the moment. I really do love this one, and yeah, it's nice to have some plants in my collection that are still growing. I pretty much just let this one dry out all the way as I do my other plants, and maybe I just let it stay a little bit moist right at the bottom of the pot. But yeah, it's I don't really have much else to say about this one. It's just kind of like the perfect plant, really. I could highly recommend it, especially if you're one of those plant parents that kind of accidentally or on purpose neglects your plants because you're busy. This one is a definite good choice for you. Next up is one of the most popular house plants. This is the aloe vera, and honestly this one has got to be one of the easiest plants I have. I really do just tend to forget about it, and I always know that it will be fine. I just make sure that it's in a cactus and succulent soil, and yeah, it just needs watering fairly sparingly, especially in winter. Just let it dry out all the way, and yeah, it seems to get through the winters just fine without suffering. And I've had this one for a few years now, so it really has proven itself to be a really hardy plant. And yeah, I just forget about it and leave it to do its thing, and that is what it likes. That's how it likes to be treated. And this one has loads and loads of babies. It's just absolutely thriving. And in fact, I did find that not only is this one fairly tolerant of lower light to medium light, but it actually doesn't really like direct sun. It tends to get burned, so I learnt that fairly early on, so I keep it out of the sun now. But yeah, it never seems to suffer from yellowing or anything else during the winter, and it's just one of my easiest plants. I could definitely highly recommend this one. It's kind of got a weird growth structure too, which I really enjoy. Next is one of my favourite hanging plants. This is the Philodendron Brazil, and yeah, I've had this one for a while now, and it really is one of those survivors. And you can kind of tell on some of the leaves that are a bit lighter, but it was getting a bit more light when those leaves came out. And then you might get just a smaller amount of the variegation there when it gets less light. But yeah, this one is one of those survivors. It's come through spider mites, it's come through thrips, it's survived winters, and yeah, it's just a really awesome plant. I think this is a super easy plant for beginners, but even if you're not a beginner like me and you just want easy plants, this one is highly recommended. And yeah, it's just got really cool heart-shaped leaves too. It's kind of the perfect plant, really, I think. Next up is the whalefin snake plant. This one's still quite small, but I've had this one now for a few years. A few years, probably more like 2, I think. And yeah, is that a new baby? No, that's not a new baby. It's quite a slow growing plant, but yeah, it's just so easy. I do really just forget about this one, what with it being so easy and so fuss free. I regularly forget to water it, and it's absolutely fine. It puts out new growth. It did start off with just this one here, this one leaf, and then these two have kind of developed. It seems to put out one leaf per year. As I say, it's not the fastest growing plant in the world, but I really like it because it's just so easy to care for, and I think if you're into snake plants like I am, then this one's quite a good option. Next is one of my all-time favourite hanging house plants. This is the neon pothos, and as you can see, it's a very fast grower. I've only had this one for one growing season, so yeah, if you're looking for a fast grower, this one's definitely for you. But this one really is one of the hardiest houseplants that I have. I know that if I accidentally neglect it and I don't water it, it will be fine. In fact, it kind of gets quite vocal if it wants water and the leaves go a little bit wrinkly, but I've never had leaves turning brown or anything like that. And yeah, it's just a real joy to have this one, and a really lovely fresh colour too. I really like the colour of this one, but yeah, it's getting quite long now, but it makes a really good shelf plant. And yeah, it's one of my favourites because it kind of gives a nice kind of splash of neon green amongst my collection, which I really like. I really hope you enjoyed today's list, and maybe you discovered some new houseplants that you'd like to add to your collection. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.